Overthinking is an infuriating problem to deal with because our usual method of dealing with problems and with solving problems is thinking. Usually, when presented with a problem, we think about it until a solution arises. So, what do we do when the problem is thinking? More thinking cannot solve a problem that is essentially too much thinking. Trying to solve overthinking by thinking about it is akin to trying to put out a bonfire by pouring petrol on it. You're only going to make it worse. And so, what to do? What to do about this problem? And this is a very common problem. Not only is it very common, it can be incredibly damaging. It causes people stress, which can make people very sick. It can stop people from sleeping. Ironically, overthinking often leads to making poor decisions and making the wrong decision. To overthink a situation usually results in action that is not so wise, not so loving, and not so kind. It usually results in taking action that is based on and coming from a place of stress and coming from a place of worry and franticness. And this is often not the right solution at all. And so we have this very common, very damaging, and very painful problem that a lot of people struggle with and are often not even aware that there is a solution to this problem. It's shockingly common for people to be chronic overthinkers and not even be aware of this. They simply believe that it's just normal. It's normal to be lost in this frantic and stressed thought stream at all times, and it's completely normal to lose sleep because you're laying awake at night, worried about the next day, about situations that you couldn't possibly control, to worry about things that probably won't even happen. And yet, we lay awake in a very stressed, very agitated, frantic state because we believe that we do not have the capability of ceasing our thought stream. I myself used to suffer terribly with overthinking and anxiety until I learned various techniques, perspectives, attitudes, and practices that allowed me to take some control of my thoughts, that allowed me to take control of my consciousness and my body. And over time, through various practices and through various insights, came to a much deeper place of peace and understanding of my own being, my own thoughts, my own mind. And I'd like to share some of these. I'd like to, if possible, present something of a solution to this very sticky, very difficult problem that is overthinking. In order to deal with any issue or any problem, we must first understand fully the nature of the problem that we are dealing with. So, what actually is overthinking? Is it even possible to overthink? And conversely, is it possible to underthink? Is there an appropriate amount of thinking? Is there a healthy level of thinking and mind activity that could be considered optimal and perfect. And the jury is still out on that one, unfortunately. There's no real science that backs up whether there is an appropriate amount of overthinking. But for my definition and my purposes, I would say if you have become aware that your own thinking causes you a level of worry, stress, and anxiety, and you have become aware that the amount, the frequency, the intensity, the severity of the thoughts and the inevitable negative emotions that come with that. If you've noticed that all of these are unreasonable in that you are no longer actually solving any issues by thinking about these issues, you simply cannot you you cannot bring your mind to a place of stillness and peace even when you've thought of an adequate solution to the problem. That's when we are in the realm of overthinking. Personally, I believe most people overthink to a far, far greater extent than they believe. And if you were to ask most people, they would probably give a percentage kind of figure that they probably think appropriately 95% of the time, but 5% of their thoughts and worry could be considered overthinking, could be considered overdoing it. But I'm going to suggest and invite you to turn that picture round the other way. I would say most people think and feel appropriately and reasonably 5% of the time, and 95% of their thoughts and feelings are overdoing it. It is simply unnecessary to, to think most of the time, which might sound quite shocking and alien, but if you begin to see things in that way, we are already beginning to go some way to understanding the nature of the problem. First, we must understand the nature of the problem and the severity of the problem. And in order to understand what overthinking is, we have to look at what an appropriate level of thinking usually is. An appropriate level of thinking is when we have an issue or something that needs the part of the brain called the neocortex, which is the problem solving part of the brain, to engage and activate. We have a problem that the neocortex needs to deal with, and then it deals with it, and then it shuts up. But we have become so accustomed to trying to analyze every single possible scenario and outcome that this neocortex gets stuck. It gets ramped up to its nth degree and just begins to work all the time. It's like having your car engine running all the time, and there's pressure on the pedal for some reason. And once it's built up momentum, it's just very difficult to switch that engine back off again. So that is overthinking. Understanding the nature of that problem. So let's say, for example, you have become aware, you begin to suspect, I think that I overthink things. I suspect that I overthink things. My own thoughts cause me worry, and then I worry that I think too much. My own thoughts cause me stress, and then I stress that I'm stressed. If you have started to become aware of this, I would suggest it's a very good idea to actually not ignore this issue, to not ignore this problem, because this overthinking does lead to anxiety, it does lead to stress, and this has a very damaging, very negative impact on your life. And so what are the solutions? What are the how can we begin to turn this engine off, to run the clock back, and to begin to give our neocortex, the worrying problem-solving part of our mind a break? How do we give it a chance to let go? Well, the second part to dealing with any problem is to understand its origins, to understand why it happens in the first place. In this way, we get to the root, we get to the seed. And so, understanding why we have a tendency to overthink. And there are two reasons for this. One is nature and one is nurture. One is biological and one is social. And so let's begin with biological. Our neocortex, the thinking part of our brain, is incredibly powerful. Very, very powerful indeed. In fact, it's what gives us the edge in the natural world, because our ability to look ahead to the future and our ability to solve problems put us very, very far ahead of the animal. Well, supposedly put us far ahead of the animal kingdom, but that's kind of debatable, really. But the neocortex itself is an incredibly powerful tool, and obviously, whenever we have a powerful tool, we're going to tend to want to use it too much, and we're going to tend to want to rely on it precisely because it's so effective. And so, biologically speaking, our brains are hardwired and our brains are geared towards utilizing this incredibly powerful tool, the neocortex, which is engaged in our problem solving, in our prediction, and also into analyzing our past and things like that. So, because we have this part of the brain that is so powerful, our brains want to use it all of the time. And we're not ordinarily going to see this as a problem because it can be so incredibly effective. Throughout the entirety of our lives, we predict problems in order to avoid them, and this is effective most of the time. I mean, you might drive to work and become aware that there are roadworks planned for the next day, and so you plan a different route, and so you take the different route and you get to work on time. You predicted a problem. Your neocortex came up with a way to get around this. This only becomes a problem when you know there are roadworks, and so you think, okay, I'm going to go a different way. And then you think, but what if that way's blocked as well? And so you plan a third route just in case. But then your mind goes, yes, but what if that route's blocked as well? Then you're going to have to plan a fourth route, and you go, okay. And so you're trying to get to sleep, and yet now you find yourself Googling Google Maps, trying to find a fourth, fifth, sixth route to try and get to work. And then you start thinking there aren't any more than 6 routes to get to work. I'm also going to have to start planning if I need to get the train to work, because what if all the routes are blocked? What if I got it wrong and actually all of the roads are shut tomorrow because of roadworks, and I'm going to have to get the train instead? So you start looking up train tickets, and then you start thinking, what if there's a rail strike? What if I can't get the train? And you start to invent many reasons why you wouldn't be able to get the train. And then you start thinking, well, what about the bus? But if the roads are closed, then I'm not going to be able to, and so on and so on and so on. And I'm sure many people listening will be able to relate to that incredibly stressful thought stream that I just went through. That's the neocortex trying to do its job. So biologically speaking, the neocortex is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Under most circumstances, it doesn't go to that extreme. It just plans the different route and then goes. But there are times in our life when the neocortex begins to ramp up its activity, particularly if you are in a period of uncertainty, you are in a period of stress, you are in a period of doubt, you are just in a naturally more anxious state of mind. This increases our adrenaline, increases our noradrenaline, increases our cortisol levels, which are the catecholamines, the stress hormones. And these chemicals in the system cause the neocortex to go a little bit haywire, to go into overdrive mode. Um, because naturally, if you're in a position where you need to solve a lot of problems, your brain is naturally going to begin engaging the problem solving areas of the brain more frequently. And that's when we end up in that situation of planning 6 routes to work and a train ticket when one of them would have sufficed. Conversely, if you remember a period of time when you were in a particularly calm and relaxed state of mind, you could be a lot more relaxed about certain things. You wouldn't really be too bothered about if you everything's going well at home, everything's going well at work, your health is good, your bills are paid, things are going well with your family, your relationships are okay. I mean, man, doesn't this all sound good? But I mean, I can't remember a time like that, but maybe you can. But if you cast your mind back to a time when all was well, it's much easier to simply say, well, if there are roadworks, there are roadworks. I'm sure it'll be all right. You're not too bothered. Maybe I'll find a different road. Maybe I won't. It doesn't bother you as much. And that's because there are fewer of these chemicals in the system. So that's the biological root and cause of overthinking. Socially speaking, we are conditioned to overthink. And this is essentially the social conditioning is the software that is downloaded into the hardware. So the social conditioning is taught to the neocortex, essentially. And in our culture, thinking is very much revered. We very much celebrate and revere people who have very analytical, logical, academic modes of thought. We very much hold in high regard people who are intelligent in that way. And this is something that is certainly reinforced by our schooling and our education, in that we are taught that it's good to think about things. It's a good thing. It's reinforced in a positive way that thinking is a good thing to do. We say to be absent minded is a bad thing. To be thoughtful is a good thing. To apply thought to a problem is often praised and regarded as something that is good. And if something has gone wrong, it's often said that, oh, that's because you didn't think about it enough, or try to think about it, or try to think. And so we grow up with this reverence of thought, and we are praised when we think, and we are punished or otherwise it's negatively reinforced when we don't think, or we feel like we didn't apply enough thought to something. And adding to this, our entire system is based around trying to predict the future, to think and plan for the future. And so our social conditioning and the social construct is the same effect as that pouring the petrol on the fire analogy. We already have brains that are hardwired and tend towards anxiety because a certain level of worry is good for survival. So we already have that with us. That comes inbuilt. That comes built into you. And then we have our social conditioning thrown on top of that. Now, it's a bit of a chicken or egg situation. Which one came first? Um, do we have the social conditioning because of the way our brains are wired, or is it the other way around? And again, the jury is still out on that one. Either way, that doesn't really matter. We know what the issue is, and so let's see what we can do about solving this issue. Before I continue, I just need to do a little plug here. If you enjoy and benefit from my meditations and talks, please consider becoming a paid subscriber to my Spotify. It's only $2.99 a month and goes a long way to supporting me and my work and allows me to produce even more of these talks and meditations. Thank you. So, how to solve this issue of overthinking, how to resolve this, how to find some sense of peace and to regain some kind of control over our own thoughts and feelings. Well, in my case, I had the sort of overthinking and anxiety that was so severe sometimes I couldn't leave the house. I was filled with fear. It was very, very difficult to function and operate. I had the sort of anxiety where it was difficult to even phone up the electric company to pay a bill. It was very difficult to get my university work done. It was difficult then to even at work. It was very, very difficult, um, and it was much later on in my life that I actually started to take a look at this and actually begin to try and figure out and sort out what was going on in my mind. And as we analyzed and assessed the nature of the problem, we look at the biological and the social. Um, just to talk a little bit first about the biological, because I actually think this goes a very, very long way to helping you resolve this issue. Is actually to look after the body and mind as a physical biological organism alongside doing all of the meditation and the social side of things also. So, biologically speaking, the best thing that you can do to get your neocortex to turn the volume down, as it were, because that's essentially what we're trying to do. We don't want to turn the neocortex off because you won't be able to function without it. But we do want to turn down the intensity and the severity of the neocortex activity, the thinking, worrying activity, or at least have the option to do so. And so, in order to turn this neocortex down, we need to bring the biological body into a calmer state, which is a state in which there is far less of what are called catecholamines, which are the stress hormones. This is your cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and so on. The most effective way of doing this is exercise, and this was very much true in my case. I began to exercise and train regularly, and the difference in my state of mind was incredible. I thought that exercise feels good whilst you're doing it. You get that sort of runner's high, or you're training in the gym and you feel great. And I didn't realize that by doing so, it was actually burning. It physically burns adrenaline out of your bloodstream. It physically burns adrenaline out of your body, and it burns cortisol out of your body as well. And so, for the first time in my life, I was 28 when I started doing any exercise at all. For the first time in my life, I knew what it felt like to have no stress hormone in my body, to have no adrenaline and no cortisol, because I was training so hard. I was running like every day, and I was hitting the gym 3-4 times a week, and I was burning all of this stress right out of the body. And I felt calm. I felt relaxed. I felt this peaceful energy that just started to pervade through my body. And I started to think, that's interesting. I used to feel this coming back after a run, just feel this kind of floaty, calm sort of state. And I know now, and I learn it's because I was burning the adrenaline out of the system. So simple, something as simple as that, but it provides a huge amount of relief from your thoughts. It's worth mentioning as well that when you're training intensely, when you're training hard, you are bringing your mind entirely into a state of presence because all you can focus on is the present moment because your body is going through so much. You can feel the burn in your legs, you're sweating, you're breathing. And so it's kind of, it helps to focus your mind entirely into the present moment. And getting into my physical training was probably my first steps into meditation without even realizing it. But physically speaking, it burns the stress right out of your body. And when your body is in a calmer state, your mind will follow suit, and vice versa. When you're in a calmer state and you're burning this energy out of the body, naturally, you are going to sleep better. And when you enter deeper, longer, more restful sleep, this naturally reduces your stress hormones. This reduces all of the catecholamines. Sleep eats stress. Sleep removes stress from the system. On top of that, psychologically speaking, when you're in REM sleep, the deep sleep, your mind is sorting out and sifting through and dealing with all of the unconscious energies, emotions, feelings that are going on in your mind throughout the day. And just on a deep physical and psychological level, the deeper you can sleep, the less you're going to overthink. Because if you're not sleeping well, and a lot of people are suffering from a chronic lack of sleep, if you're not sleeping well, your unconscious mind hasn't had a chance to process everything that it needs to process. And so it starts to bring all of this stuff up. It's your unconscious mind starts to encroach into your conscious mind, and that's what begins to cause this kind of franticness, or it's one of the things that begins to cause this franticness in your neocortex, in your mind. So biologically speaking, we want to try and reduce the stress hormones naturally where possible, but there are medications for this as well. The SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, commonly known as antidepressants, can be very useful in order to mitigate and alleviate anxiety and depression. It's by no means the solution, and it's by no means a long-term solution, and it doesn't sedate you, as a lot of people kind of mistakenly believe. But it does help your mind to just process things a little calmer and a little better, and hopefully with a slightly lighter mood. Um, I use medication at various times throughout my sort of recovery, my transformation. I don't take any now, because, like I say, it's not the solution. It's not a long-term thing, but it can help you through if you're in a very difficult place with your overthinking. And like I say, don't underestimate it. If it's causing you harm, if it's stopping you sleeping, and if it's causing anxiety and stress, see a doctor about it, and they might prescribe something. It might help. You never know. So that's the biological. This is how we can. It feels like you're taking action as well. This is one of the great things about the exercise and the good things that you can do in order to change your body physically to help you burn away this overthinking, this worry, because you can feel you're doing something. As with, like, sometimes with like reading about things, learning about things, talking about things, these are all fantastic things to do, but sometimes you just cannot feel the progress that you're making. But when you're training, you can feel and you can see the difference in your body and mind on a daily basis. You can feel yourself improving. And so, yeah, that exercise and physical training goes a very long way to helping you to resolve this issue of overthinking. When it comes to the sort of psychological, social aspects, it comes down to changing your beliefs, attitudes, opinions, way of perceiving the world, and way of perceiving yourself that will ultimately result in a change of thought. and subsequently feeling. And so the first thing that we can do on a psychological basis is to recognize deeply that thought is very rarely an accurate indication of reality. Thought, although we revere thought as being the thing that builds our picture of truth about the world around us, we come to find that often the way we were thinking about something, the way we were perceiving things, was wrong. And how often were you absolutely convinced about something that then later turned out to be false? So the beginning of lessening our tendency to overthink from a psychological standpoint is to begin recognizing that thought isn't the be all and end all about the reality of your experience in life and in the world. There are two main things to recognize when it comes to using meditative practice to alleviate overthinking. And the first one is the most powerful one, and that is the practice of presence, the understanding of presence, which is to say, it is only ever the present moment. We are relentlessly thinking about the future. And because we relentlessly think about the future, we cannot see that the future doesn't exist. There is no such thing as the future. We spend our lives worrying and thinking about something that is simply not real. It's not there. It's only ever the present moment. Most people go their entire lives and completely miss this, which is nothing less than tragic, because your entire life happens within the now. By the time the future, the so-called future, arrives, it's now. Do this for yourself now, a little exercise. Try to experience the future. Not predicting the future, not imagining the future, not worrying about the future, not thinking about the future, but instead try to experience directly the future. Try to do this now. Really try. You know, we worry about this. We worry about the future arriving. We're convinced the future is there. So try it. Let's go there. Let's go to the future. This thing that's so supposedly a massive problem. Any luck? No. And will that ever happen? Will you ever wake up one day and it will be the future? You will find yourself in the future? It will still be now. You will only ever be aware and conscious of now. We can say the same about the past, and we overthink the past as well. We bring up old memories and overthink and overanalyze this too. Same exercise. Let's all return to the past now. Let's all go back there. Let's all go and experience yesterday. Not memory, not thinking about the past, but actually experience it. Any luck? Of course not. And you never will experience the past either. So right there, through your actual experience, this isn't theory, this isn't belief, this isn't a concept that I'm introducing, but through your direct experience, you've just had the experience of the present moment, recognizing and feeling fully there is no future, there is no past, there never has been, and there never will be. By experiencing the present moment, your mind will naturally begin to ease off the throttle. The neocortex, the activity of the neocortex is time bound. It has no choice but to predict the future, to analyze the past, to worry, to imagine, to be anxious, and to ruminate. And so the activity of the neocortex, which is what we're trying to diminish and lessen here consciously, is tied to this concept. It is tied to a concept of the future and the past. But a concept is not reality. A concept is not reality. A concept is an idea. It is a thought. The future is a concept. The past is a concept, but it is not reality. Reality is now. So by instead of being lost in the future and lost in the past, you can draw your attention entirely into this present moment, the right here, the right now. And so your neocortex begins to ease off the throttle and turns the volume down, 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 because it's no longer needed. It's no longer required. Your service, it's akin to saying to the neocortex, thanks for your service, take a break. Thank you for dealing with all of these issues and these problems, but right now we're going to take a break. And we do this by bringing our attention entirely into the present moment. This begins to shift the way you perceive the world, the way you see the world, the way you then interact with the world, the way you deal with the world. And ultimately, the neocortex begins to take the place that it should have always been in, which is the neocortex should work for you. The mind should work for you. The mind should be a help. The mind should be your employee, not your employer. And that is a big, big part of the problem, is that the worker has become the dictator. By bringing yourself within the present moment, you experience reality as it is, which is to say, it is now. Only ever has been now, only ever will be now. Continually bring yourself fully into the present moment and you watch the changes that happen within your mind. The way your mind operates, the way your mind works, you will be calmer, more peaceful, more serene, more filled with energy. And trust me, you're not going to miss anything. You're really not going to miss anything. Anything that needs to be dealt with, any of these situations in your life that require thought, you will think an appropriate amount about them within the present moment. And then once that thought is done and over with, it is left to the side. The worker goes back to taking a break. Let's make the mind work for you. You are not working for the mind. That's presence. The second principle, understanding, that we must fully immerse ourselves in and understand is that you are not your thoughts and feelings. And this comes as a surprise to a lot of people. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. And all of our lives, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that I am my thoughts and I am my feelings. But let's take a little look at this. let's perform a little inquiry here into what is the nature of thought and emotion. Take the current thought, the thought that is in your mind at this moment within the present, and just observe this thought. Don't analyze the thought, don't judge the thought. We're not creating an opinion on the thought. Just observe the thought as it is now. Now take the current emotion, the current feeling, the current state of emotion that accompanies the thought. Just observe this without any attachment, without even naming. Don't even name or label any thought or feeling. Just observe. Now, I'm sure you are able to be aware of your thought and your emotion. Now, understanding if you can observe your thought and your feeling, it stands to reason that you are not your thought and your feeling. It stands to reason that you are that which is observing your thought and your feeling. Now, before changing the perspective in this way, it would have been natural and a matter of habit that you would be lost in the thought and feeling and feel like these thoughts and feelings are you, that makes up the entirety of your experience. And yet now, by observing the thought and feeling, we have created a distance between your thought, your feelings, and you. So if you are able to observe thought and feeling, you are not your thoughts and feelings. Now, this begins to withdraw the energy from your thoughts and feelings. And if you are lost in the hell of overthinking and anxiety, and I use that word intentionally, it's hell. It's very, very painful to be lost in overthinking. The next time you find it happening, instead of trying to change your thoughts and feelings, instead of trying to stop your thoughts and feelings, instead get into the habit of simply observing your thoughts and feelings. Get into the habit of simply watching, as though you are watching clouds passing in the sky. You simply open your conscious awareness so that you become the sky rather than the clouds. Another very powerful analogy is to imagine that you are stood on a train platform and you are watching the trains pull up, stop, and then leave. And each of these trains is a thought or a feeling. Simply don't get on board. Do not jump onto any train. Simply observe each thought and feeling come and go. And if you find that you are on a train and hurtling along, simply wait for it to stop at the platform, get off, and never get back on a train ever again. So, in this way, we can alter our perception, our attitudes, our beliefs, and our way of perceiving the world in order to slow down and turn the volume down on our thinking. And there are many different ways of practicing this on a deeper level. So meditation, taking time to practice formal meditation, is a very, very powerful way of doing this, because this, in the same way that we train the body, meditation trains your conscious awareness and attention to not keep getting lost automatically in these thoughts and feelings. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. In some people, it does. It's quite incredible, really. You see it all the time. You can explain the concept of presence to somebody and they just get it. They just immediately get it. And all of a sudden, their entire lives just become more peaceful and more serene simply from a shift in perspective and nothing more. But for most people, it takes some time. And it is almost like taking an ice cube and putting it into warm water. The ice cube will melt, but it might take a little while for the warmth of the water to begin melting and dissolving the ice. So, formal meditation practice and the daily activity of trying to bring your awareness into the present moment is the cure. It is the solution to overthinking. I can attest to the power of doing these things, of the exercise and the meditation, and taking these very conscious and powerful steps towards gaining a deeper insight and understanding into the workings of your own mind. That's everything I have on overthinking today. Thank you for listening. I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's been useful. I hope some of the information presented here has been of some benefit to you. For further reading, I would recommend the book Finding Peace in a Frantic World. It's a very good introduction to meditation and mindfulness. I'd recommend The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I'd recommend looking up teachers such as Rupert Spira and Muji. But there are many out there, and with meditation in particular, and with changing beliefs and outlooks, attitudes towards thought, thinking, and life, it really will be a very individual thing. So it will come down to there's no 100% right answer. It's just about finding what works for you. But ultimately, we are all going to arrive at the same place, which is ironically the same place we've always been, which is right here, right now, in pure, open, empty, conscious awareness. If you have enjoyed and benefited from my talks and meditations, again, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. It's only $2.99 a month, less than the price of a coffee, and it really does go a long way to support me and my work. Feel free to check me out on Instagram, Corin_Bryant, and Facebook, Corin Bryant, personal trainer and meditation coach. Thank you so much for listening. I hope my words have been useful and helpful for you. Take care and be well.